Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. You're watching Arba'een Q&A with myself, Muzaffar Hyder. Here in the studio today we have with us Sheikh Ali. Sheikh Ali, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
It's a pleasure and an honor to have you here today. So Sheikh, I'd like to begin the discussion with asking for a bit of advice. Well, not advice, I'd like to ask you for some lessons or some light that could be shed on the event of Arba'een. Bearing in mind that we're going to be discussing about the unity of Muslims.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir la'eenir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Our condolences, our hearty condolences on the martyrdom of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. And today millions flock towards the holy land of Karbala to commemorate the martyrdom of Imam Hussain, to pay tribute to him, to pay homage to him, and to salute him for what he did 1,400 years ago. He saved humanity. He saved the principles of humanity. This whole event of Arba'een, which holds a very great significance today, if you notice, there are many lessons embedded in this annual event. One of the lessons, as the leader puts it, is the memory of truth and the remembrance of shahadat must be kept alive against the storm of the propagation of the enemy.
Right.
So we have enemies, there's no doubt about it. There are people, there are those evil powers who are conspiring against us, who are conspiring against Islam, who's conspiring against the justice seekers throughout the world. The lesson of Arba'een is to keep the remembrance of martyrdom alive, which means we are ready to give sacrifice for these human principles, for the dignity of humanity, for justice, for peace on earth. At the same time, we are ready to stand up to establish truth, to establish justice, right? And this is exactly what the leader of the Islamic Ummah, Imam Khamenei, is saying in this statement. Another of his statement, which also gives us some messages, is look and see that in order to gather 10,000 people or 50,000 people in one place,
I've heard this one.
How much propagation and advertisement is conducted in the world, and in the end, it doesn't come to fruition.
I think this speaks louder for yourself, Sheikh. You've attempted this, haven't you,
Exactly.
in the past? And
Exactly.
I think many of the people out there, activists and people who are active in these kinds of fields, they try to gather people for a certain cause. It's very difficult.
Very difficult.
People
Nobody
don't
responds to your call. But when it comes to Imam Hussain alayhi salam, let me complete this statement. Imam Khamenei says, in this case, despite several hurdles, this means in case of Karbala and Arba'een, despite several hurdles, from Iran alone, 2 million people come for an 80 kilometers walk.
Subhanallah.
They come for a walk, not for enjoyment or laying down in a hotel. This is a divine event. This is a divine phenomena. This is a sign that this path is the path of ishq, like we said, deep love, deep true love. But it's not a nonsense ishq. Rather, it is an ishq with basira. So let me expand this last line.
After the break,
Sure.
inshallah, dear viewers, we'll be right with you, so stay tuned.
I am the mother that gave away sons, suffered when I lived without my loved ones. I am the mother that gave away sons, suffered when I lived without my loved ones. I am left all alone without them beside me. I am left all alone without them beside me. Father of Sajjad, will you come back and sit here beside me? Tell me, will I hear your voice? And will I look at your beauty? You're the one I want to speak to, and your face I want to now see. Oh my son, will you come back? Missing you will break my back. Maybe I should start to wear black. It will make me sad and angry. It will make me sad and angry. As long as you come back to me alive, you can now go and you can now strive. As long as you come back to me alive, you can now go and you can now strive. Never I felt the same without them beside me. Never I felt the same without them beside me. I am the mother that gave away sons, suffered when I lived without my loved ones. I am the mother that gave away sons, suffered when I lived without my loved ones. I am left all alone without them beside me. I am left all alone without them beside me. From the voices of the people, I am waiting for the one sound. Tell me that Father of Akbar, with the eyes he can be now found. Instead, I hear on the spear's head and his body's on the ground. For my four I am now in pain, not as much as my son Hussein. His love is running in the vein, and to my heart it is the key. And to my heart it is the key. I am hurt not because of my fault. For Hussein my pain is for sure. I am hurt not because of my fault. For Hussein my pain is for sure. Now I will live my life without them beside me. Now I will live my life without them beside me. I am the mother that gave away sons, suffered when I lived without my loved ones. I am the mother that gave away sons, suffered when I lived without my loved ones. I am left all alone without them beside me. I am left all alone without them beside me. Without them beside me. Without them beside me.
Dear viewers, welcome back. Before the break, we were discussing about the ishq, the deep infatuation or love that we have with the Spirit of Allah, with Imam Hussein, with the movement of Arba'een, and you were going to expand a little bit on the leader's statement where he mentions that, you know, well, it's really difficult to gather even 10,000 people for a specific cause. Right. Yet, for the cause of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, look how many people voluntarily leave the comfort of their homes to participate.
Right, 20 million people on the average, give or take. 20 million is not a joke. We all know how busy we are with our own lives nowadays, with our schools, with our universities, with our colleges, with our workplaces, with our projects, so much going on with our kids, engagements and whatnot. But still, 20 million people every year
Subhanallah.
leave the comfort of their homes. They travel all the way to even a country that can be said, up until last year at least, was a war-torn country. It was under the attack of notorious and terrorist organization like Daesh, right?
And before that, the Ba'athist Saddam Hussein regime.
Still, people
supported by America.
They take this trip. They take on this travel. Now, this last line is very interesting. The leader says, but it's not a nonsense ishq. Yes, it's a deep and true love, but it's not nonsense. There is intellect. Remember, we talked about it before too, that Islam minus intellect is not Islam.
Yeah.
Similarly, Islam minus emotions is not Islam.
Is not Islam.
Right? These two things, they go hand in hand. And our emotions, if we are a true Muslim, if we are a devout Muslim, our emotions are, as a matter of fact, under the shade of our intellect. The intellect is the one that governs and takes us to that level where the ishq, or the emotional part of our being, that is very well tamed. It knows when to kick off. So the leader says that it is with basira. Basira means insight, deep insight. You understand the dynamics. You understand the challenges. You understand the situations. This is what basira is. Rapper says that this ishq is with basira. So for all the viewers out there who are taking this trip of ishq, remember to increase in your basira before you leave, on your way to Karbala, and when you especially get in front of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Ask for basira through the means of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and inshallah, may Allah grant you and myself basira, where we can understand, we can digest, we can logically dissect these topics and understand what is going on in the world and what our responsibility is.
And with that idea of basira, I think that's the perfect place to introduce the concept of unity between Muslims, because that is where you need that foresight, you need that deep insight into the kind of the political atmosphere in which we're living. It doesn't make sense to be disunited with our Sunni brethren. But before we come to that, I mean, we want to spend more time discussing that, so I think we're going to leave that for the next episode. Sure. Right now, though, Sheikh, I'd like to ask you a question. It might come across as a little bit childish, but I am curious. You're older than myself, and I'd like to ask, this movement of Arba'een and it being the biggest human kind of gathering in the world, yearly gathering, and it being this widely propagated, not by mainstream media, but among our circles. If you notice, Shia people usually know about what's going on. When did this start? I mean, has it always been this big of a deal? I mean, have there always been this many people flocking to Karbala?
As a matter of fact, no, that's not true. When the incident of Karbala happened, and right after it, the Imams, they start pushing to visit Imam Hussein's grave, right after the incident of Karbala. So Imam Sajjad alayhi salam and Sayyida Zainab salamun alayha, they partnered, if you would, and they took this movement to the next level. Imam Sajjad alayhi salam being the leader of the Muslims at the time, the Imam of the Muslims, the Imam al-Muslimin, he pushed for people to go and visit Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So he started to turn it into a movement. Now, look at the political climate at that time. Banu Umayyah in power, right? Banu Umayyah is controlling the borders. They have their police. They have their, all the security forces in different areas. They martyred Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So people going to Imam Hussein alayhi salam's grave would be, everybody's going to ask, what happened to Imam Hussein?
Right.
Who martyred him, right? So they, in the fear of defamation, they were not letting people go to the grave of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Now, The time went on, and Banu Umayyah, they started to see that despite their efforts, even the negative propaganda, they were not able to control people, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that through the Holy Prophet, that the love of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is like a flame in the hearts of the believers, which is not going to extinguish till the Day of Judgment, right? Now, they were not able to stop the believers and mu'mineen. What did they do then? They started to execute people for visiting the grave of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And now on the other side, look at what the strategy or the divine strategy of the Imams was. They kept pushing for it.
Yeah.
And they kept explaining the reward for visiting the grave of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So you can well imagine, under the given circumstances, not too many people would risk their lives. But rest assured, there were enough people who would be going to Imam Hussein's grave that Banu Umayyah, they kept feeling that they're threatened by this movement. The Imams, they kept on trying to convert it into a movement where the believers would get together, they would flock together, and when they see that such a big injustice has been done against the Ahlul Bayt, they rise up against the government. But Banu Umayyah knew that. Banu Umayyah, they wanted to contain it. So they used different tricks. For instance, just one thing is like Banu Umayyah and Banu Abbas, both of them, by the way, they had announced back in the day that if somebody goes for the ziyarah of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, their right hand will be chopped off. So if you go for the visitation of the grave of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, your right hand will be chopped off. Now, on the other hand, the infallible Imams, they are pushing for people to go. They're like, there is this reward, there is that reward, you get Jannah, you get this. They're pushing for this. And on the other hand, the government is pushing, the government of the time, it was pushing for something opposite. What do people do? The believers, and this is where it's interesting and it is very eye-opening. The believers, even with the fear of losing their hands, they went to the grave of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And if you pick up the history books, you see that they gave their hands. Their hands were chopped off, literally chopped off, for visiting the grave of Imam Hussein alayhi salam.
Subhanallah.
Now, not just men, and this is where it becomes more, eye-opening for us to evaluate ourselves. Where do we stand? Even the women. Even the women, ordinary women, they gave their right hands, and next year they go for the ziyarah again, the visitation again, and the cop says, your right hand will have to be chopped off. She said, okay, here's my left hand. He's like, did you not listen? I'm saying right hand. She's like, I got that chopped off last year.
Allahu Akbar.
So now she was there to get the second hand chopped to keep this ziyarah and keep this visitation alive. So see, this movement, it actually took a while before it could get traction. Even in the time of, if we fast forward to recent and contemporary history, in the time of Saddam, the Ba'athist Hukumat and the government, they were not allowing people to go to the grave of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Right?
But
it was not as open. But then after the fall of this Saddam, things changed. Things changed. And especially because of the Islamic Revolution that came about in Iran, the entire school of the followers of Ahlul Bayt, they gained strength. They gained power. And now they had backing.
I'm sorry, Sheikh, I know I asked you a very open question there, and I really want to continue, but we've run out of time. I'd like to thank you for coming to the show today, and Jazakallah for sharing your words with us and your wisdom with us. Dear viewers, we hope you enjoyed the show and benefited from it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.